Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode of the SaaS Sessions podcast. Today we have Smrithi Parameswar on the show with us. Smrithi is a product leader who is passionate about marrying great user experiences with technology to deliver business value. With over a decade of experience, Smrithi has spent the past 7 years with Freshworks in their product function, working on products like Freshdesk, Freshchat, Freshcaller, and Freshconnect. Smriti joined as a second product manager on Freshdesk, and while she was there, after working on the Freshdesk product for about 2 years, she also helped the company launch three new products, which are Freshchat, Freshcaller, and Freshconnect. So, hey Smriti, such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Hi, Sunil. Likewise, very excited to be on the show and have this conversation.
Awesome. So, I would definitely love to talk about how a company can launch multiple products when they already have like one product which is working for them. And that's what we're going to talk on the show. But before we move on to that, can you tell us more about yourself? I gave a very short and brief introduction about you, Smriti. So, and also, how's your journey been like into the SaaS ecosystem?
Sure. It's interesting that you talk about journey into SaaS, right? Because
Uh-huh.
I usually think of how journey of any product manager is very unique because at least, when I was finishing school, you don't really say, I want a career in product management at that point. So people sort of land into it from different areas. And like a lot of people, I started out as a developer. I was developer for e-commerce applications for a couple of years. And in fact, that was at a time when e-commerce was hardly there in India. So for me, it was amazing that people would even buy things online and not go to a shop physically and buy it when I was working on these products, right?
Uh-huh.
And of course, they were US companies. So it was really interesting that I think that was my first interest into tech-enabled businesses. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
really looking to be, coming into this industry or even doing something product related. So that was very, very interesting for me. And that was my first spark with it. I then went on to do my MBA at Carnegie Mellon in the US. And
Nice.
even then, I wasn't really looking at coming into tech long term. Like many students or many B school aspirants, I was thinking consulting, things like that. But quickly into my first year, I realized maybe consulting was not something I was very deeply interested about. And then I started kind of exploring what are the other areas. And fortunately for me, I again got to work on an e-commerce startup, but this time it was more on the business analytics side.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it got my more and more into tech enabled businesses. And what really was great is, and I was a business analyst for the next couple of years for a couple of different startups. But
Uh-huh.
what was really interesting is it helped me sort of dig into the business models of how these companies work, what are the levers that help. And I also got to work with stakeholders across the company, right? I
Got it.
wasn't just
Mm-hmm.
siloed into one function. For example,
Mm-hmm.
while I was trying to figure out profitability for it's a startup, right? So they're still trying to figure out what categories worked for them, what categories didn't. And I got to interview and talk to people in the warehouse, in the design studio, photographing and cataloging products. I was able to get insights like certain categories where
Uh-huh.
actually slower in shipping because they are just rearranged in a certain way in a warehouse. And those are all amazing, that holistic view. At the same time, I could look at the digital data to see what sort of
Mm-hmm.
products were cross sold better, what sort of customers bought different things together. So it was very interesting to get that overall experience, right? And still I wasn't in SaaS at all, and I didn't really know about SaaS. But
Mm-hmm.
those are all things that helped me sort of look at what are the drivers of a business, right?
Got it.
Those gave me that. And as I was doing this, I sort of then realized that, okay, it's great to get all this information and give these insights, but I wanted to be closer to the product. I wanted to be closer to the customer and, determining how the business ran, right? And product is a big part of that. So then I decided, okay, I definitely want to try product management. I obviously didn't know whether I would be good at it or bad at it. And even then, because of my experience, I was looking at B2C companies because I worked for mobile advertising, I worked for e-commerce. So that seemed, and obviously as an end user myself, I seem to understand those businesses and those motivations more. But I also knew I wanted to try out product management. And at that point, I actually started exploring opportunities in India. I definitely knew I wanted to come back to India. I was still in the US at this point. And in India, there were more and more startups coming up. There was more funding coming up. Again, but at this point, I was only looking at e-commerce was the first big spree of funding, right, in India. So I was looking at all of that. And then I took that big leap and said, okay, let me move back to India. And it also, for me personally, it also worked out because my fiance at that point, my husband now, was also based out of here. And we were trying to decide, shall we both be in the US or shall we both be in India? So I took the plunge and came back. And funnily enough, because I am from Chennai, my family's from Chennai. Whilst I was still looking at Bangalore startups, a friend of mine from Axel introduced me to Girish, who was the CEO of Freshworks. Right? And I really didn't know about SaaS until then. Right? I didn't really know enough about it. And I had a great conversation with him. And I think that sort of changed the direction I went, right, in my career. And I didn't look back after that. And I'm really glad of that, because that introduced me to a whole world of SaaS. Freshworks, like you mentioned, I was the second product manager, but at the same time, Freshworks was also very small. We were less than 100 employees at that point. And because of my background, I also told Girish I want to try product management, and that's what this big move is about. So if that's something that he was willing to experiment with me, then I would also, want to come on board and experiment. So what happened was, actually, because of my data analytics background, I also helped Freshworks a lot, because we didn't have people for each of those teams. It's a very small team, right? So I helped out in a lot of those projections, figuring out how to kind of show our data, working with those sort of numbers and other things, growth projections. But at the same time, I also started ramping up on the product side. And of course, like you said, I was working on the Freshdesk product. That's what we had in the market at that point. So for me, again, it was great because I was learning product management in the context of SaaS, but I was also getting into the numbers and the metrics of SaaS, which are so important. And that is one of the biggest things as to why people are enamored by SaaS, right? The high margins, the longevity of the business, the sustainability of business, if it's done right. So I got exposure to that. At the same time, was building products, talking to customers. So I think from a learning curve, that was really steep and very, very exciting for me. And as we were doing that, and as we were doing more features on the products itself, Freshworks always had, or Girish always had the vision of doing multiple products. He comes from Zoho, and that vision is always there. So as we were looking into newer products, the pieces that I was working on itself at Freshdesk started looking at how to spin them off as separate products. So I got the opportunity to lead a product, Freshchat. We did it from scratch in terms of looking at what is our MVP, how do we get to market, who are we positioning to, how do we position differently from what is there in the market, but at the same time, how is it aligned to what Freshworks wants to do, how does it help Freshdesk. And by then we had released Fresh Service, and it also launched Fresh Sales. So how does it align to those products, right? How do we bring all of that together? Those become more important questions which you won't think of when you're just doing a startup on your own, right? Of course, you have other worries, but these are some new considerations that come into play, right? What are the synergies that we want? So Freshchat, I was through that journey, launch, beta, all of that. And then we did some restructuring in the org, and I went to a new product called Freshcaller, which hadn't launched yet. But that was something that we were looking at closely, and there was some leadership change there. So again, figuring out how to get that out into the market. It's a telephony product, but we had to look at it very differently from how some of our competitors are, because we were part of a larger SaaS company. Most of the telephony players in the market were standalone or telephony first. So, and there are a lot of things which are outside of SaaS when it comes to telephony, right? There is your calling minutes, there's regulations in different countries. So how do you synergize this into the ecosystem of a larger company like Freshworks? And similarly for Freshconnect, that was a third product. Currently, I actually just left Freshworks a few months back, and now I'm an independent consultant for product startups. I work with them for positioning, strategy, execution, and all of that. So that's sort of been my journey,
Nice.
and doing all of those products.
What a great journey, Smriti. And I have so many points and so much to talk. But want to pick one aspect that you mentioned, right? It's like Girish coming from a company like Zoho, which had multiple products back then, and now
Mm-hmm.
he's building Freshworks, and he's obviously they Freshworks started with Freshdesk, and then Fresh Service the next, and then like the company went on to build like multiple products, right? So how did Freshworks as a company, or how can any company decide that that they have to build new products which would be an extension of the current product that they have,
Mm-hmm.
and how different it is than building a starting up a new product company entirely, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
what's, yeah, according to you, because you would have experience in launching three products for them.
So when you, like you said, right, there are factors when you're launching a startup and a new product, and then when you're doing it as part of a larger company, some of the same things come in, right? Who is your market? How are we going to sell to them? Are we solving the right problem? All of those considerations. Do we have a good team in place? All of those considerations are there. But apart from that, what you need to also look at is in terms of why are we building the product, right? So when you look at when you're already in a product company, and either it's your second product or third product, you have to. There are two things as to why you should be looking at a new product. One is, and always, the company, the senior execs, the founders need to be thinking about this. One is, how do you strengthen what you have in the market, right? And what are the levers that will help you? Because as you grow, your customer acquisition costs, your the lead generation methods that you have will saturate, and you will obviously, as you have a larger base, you also have to worry about newer competition coming in the market. Always, as a product company, yes, you're competing against people who are already there in the market, but especially as you mature, you should be very, very aware of the new products that are coming into your industry, right? Because they can really disrupt faster than you, because you are a larger company. So you have to keep a lookout for how do you create a larger moat, how do you get deeper with existing customers. And so you have to look at some of those things. So how do you increase your TAM? How do you kind of increase your deal size with each of your customers? What are the more additional things that your customers want, right? From a business sense. From a product
Uh-huh.
sense, you also start seeing what are the things that your customers are asking for, right? For example, when we had live chat in Freshdesk, which is a customer support software, right? Our customers, what I saw was we were also using the live chat feature to do sales capabilities, right? They were saying we want to put it on our website to new prospects, not just customers that we're trying to support. So that shows that it's a product that can work across sales and support, right? So that's one of the things when we're thinking about how do we platformize it, so that we bring it out and have all the products use it, not just Freshdesk, right? Have Fresh Sales also use it. So that's a thought process. So you have to keep looking at both from the customer angle and also on the market angle. The second part is about, are you being ahead of the curve, right?
Uh-huh.
How do you stay relevant? Like how Netflix thought about doing streaming when they already had their DVD rentals, because they're looking at what is the future of entertainment, right? So you
Got
have to
it.
be looking at future trends too, and you have to constantly be looking at both of these. Sometimes the products may sort of converge in terms of it'll satisfy both of that, and
Uh-huh.
that's how you look at how you build. And why I'm saying these things are relevant is because you might still have a brilliant idea, you might still think that, hey, let's go attack it, but if it's not synergizing some of the things in the company, you are at a disadvantage, because every startup that's coming up doing that same thing can move much faster than you. So as a company that already has a product and has some processes in place, you have to see how can you leverage your sales team. Can you use your same GTM engine? Can you use your same sales and can the same sales people sell these new products? Can your same lead gen methodologies, which obviously you have functional expertise in, either if it's outbound sales or if it's field sales, or if
Mm-hmm.
it's a lead Google AdWords, can you replicate some of those things for these newer products? Can you use maybe some architecture that you already have? Can you reuse it for your new products? So those are the areas you have to see from an internal perspective of how you can leverage, because customers can ask certain things, but and that's why you make a choice saying, hey, we don't have the synergies to do it, but our customers want it, so let's make good partnerships.
Makes
But
sense.
if we have the synergies and customers are also demanding it, then let's build it, or then you can decide to acquire it and then plug it into your system. So you can make all of those decisions with better clarity.
Got it. And I believe that, as the launching these new products could help a company in many ways, but there might be some cases where this could all go wrong as well, right? So how do you make sure that that something wrong is not happening, or whatever time efforts you are investing in
Sure,
this new
sure.
product, and it syncs up, and it is something that the same set of customers want, because one reason that you're creating this new suite of products, or even just a new product, right, for any company, that is also to upsell to your existing set of customers, right? So
Absolutely.
in this case, it's easier for the new product to get product market fit, because you already have a set of customers who are ready to test, and who already trust you, your brand, your company, and they would trust another product from the same brand and same company. So
Yeah,
like, how do you make sure that all these efforts doesn't go south, or
sure, sure.
are worth it, or
Yeah.
can be a better and successful product?
So there are a couple of different parts, right, to that question. So the first part is in terms of looking at how do you kind of ensure that you are successful, or how to increase the chances of being successful, right? And then there's a second part saying, do you build products? Can you also build products which are not relevant, or you only build things which can be sold together, or one of that. So I'll answer that separately. So the first part is in terms of, as a multi-product company, you have to also keep in mind very clearly that as you have more and more products, there will be a few experiments and products that fail, and there will be a few which will do really well. I mean, just like how a VC has so many investments and some of them do well, some of them don't. Even companies like Google and Microsoft release products and then they get shelved. So it's part of the process, right? So you have to treat it like that, but you only go in with clarity of goals, right? So if we're saying that, hey, I know I'm selling to these customers, but for example, I'm just giving a use case where, and the customers love our product. It's just that our sales cycle is really long, so our customer acquisition cost versus our lifetime value is not enough, right? But we know the customer wants all these other things. So it's a great way to say, let's build another product which is relevant to the needs that they have. So we know that we're acquiring the customer once, but maybe we're getting the double the deal size, because we're also filling some of these other needs the customer wants. So the goal of that product is very clear when you're going forth, right? And that could be the goal of that new product that you are building. Secondly, it could also be something like, hey, I want to increase the total TAM that I want to be able to address, right? Or rather, what is the addressable market that I actually have the ability to do? I want to increase that. It's just so that, to show that we have a higher growth potential, we're not maturing. Because the reality is, every business or every product, they'll go through something called the S curve, right? So it will start out, while you're figuring out product market fit, it'll be flat, and then you'll have a high growth period, and then there's maturity and you'll flatten out again. So, I mean, and that could be how many years, depending on the domain and the function, I mean, the product that you are doing and how big that market is. But the idea is that before you reach that, steady state where you flatline, where you are able to have newer ways to, have growth. So I think there are of course many papers on it, business model papers on it. So it's called jumping the S curve, right? So you have enough experiments in play, so that at least, say if you are trying out one or two different products, at least one of the second one will succeed, and to keep giving you that growth after 10 years, after 15 years, after 20 years, right? How do you really extend yourself as a product? And that's the basic premise of why you're doing another product. Now, and like I said, it's very well possible that you will fail, which is why you need to get into this only after the first product is stable, right? So you need to have cracked product market fit. You need to have cracked, like, for example, a lot of global SaaS companies out of India, you look at different markets. You look at US as a market, you look at Europe as a market. You might try to get into the reseller partnership sort of model. You might try inbound, outbound. So you're trying different things. So you need to sort of have a steady state there where your product fits a certain kind of sales model, and maybe you try out a few more extensions of that sales model to ensure that there is steady growth happening in that product. And when you're in that steady state and that's happening, and now that you've had that sort of process and business model built out, and that can keep scaling and grow for the next few years, right? And now what is a new thing that you want to try? The new thing you want to try could be this new product, which can leverage the same GTM methodologies that you've set up, right? Either it's an inside sales team or a lead generation team. It can leverage some of those same things and again add value to the hopefully the same customers, and then you can build that out. So that's how you look at it. So, and yes, it could fail, but you reduce the chances of failure when you already have all of these other processes set up. And what you have to do also is to try to kind of keep that new product as nimble as possible, like an external startup, right? So you create its own budget. You create like you have a team lead who could be from a founder perspective, who could be an ex-founder, or who has that hustle mentality, because they literally have to, and not just hustle mentality, at the same time they have to be able to work with the larger management and team of the organization. So you literally have to build out a team that knows how to move fast, but at the same time knows how to leverage what's going on in the organization, right? And obviously that's where it's tricky, right? You have to build the right team, and like all even new products out in the market, getting the right team is so important. So those things increase your chances of success. And when you're very clear on what you're going after with these new products, then that also increases your chance of success. And then of course you have the same journey of product market fit. The advantages you have is that you might have a few customers that you can try out the product early on. But also on the other side is that you can't just put out an experimental, very, very bare bones thing, because you have a certain brand, you have a certain, scalability that your customers expect from you, right? Especially if you're a large enterprise company, you can't experiment with those customers with a very, very new product, which might not be so scalable. Whereas a startup will be excused for, maybe having more bugs or something like that. Whereas now you have to, that's the other side of it, right? You have to hit the bar that you already set with your first product. You have to already set it up to that standards in terms of user experience, in terms of customer service, in terms of how fast you fix issues, all of that. But at the same time, you also have to be as nimble as possible. So the reality is you would end up being a little slower than a new startup in the same field, which is why you have to leverage all the other things that the larger company can give you. So, I mean, I don't know if that answered what you were asking in terms of how do you,
it definitely paints a
work
picture
towards most success. The other part you were saying is, can you do something completely unrelated to the main product, right?
Yeah.
The idea of building multiple products is, like I said, it comes back from the philosophy of it, right? The philosophy is that you build a moat around your ecosystem of products. You make it harder for a customer to churn. You ensure that there's lesser pain points of integrations. These are all like things, benefits for the customers. Internally, you obviously reduce your customer acquisition cost. You increase the lifetime value of the customer. You are able to have more opportunities of cross sell, right? And increase value in terms of each product, and selling them to each other. So those are the advantages. Now, when you go to a completely separate sort of business, I would say, and again, I can't think of any examples where someone has done something so successfully going completely separate. But some of the synergies I think companies should still look at is, do you have at least a GTM sales model synergy? Do you have an infrastructure synergy? And I'll give an example from Freshworks itself. Fresh Service was the second product that Freshworks launched. It's not well. One of the things is the need for it came from Freshdesk, we saw that a lot of Freshdesk customers wanted very specific IT things. So that was the spark that led Freshworks to start that second product. But at the same time, you weren't selling it to the same customers, right? Sometimes maybe in the future they would say, yes, we know another team is using Freshservice, so yes, we have more trust in you to buy Freshdesk or some other product. But they weren't usually using it together. But the products themselves, right, the technology was similar, so we could leverage it. The SMB sales model, the inside sales model was similar, so we could leverage it. So at least there were some things that could leverage. Example, even if you look at FMCG, right, if say PepsiCo company has Lay's and it also has Pepsi, it's different products, but sometimes people might buy it together. It's not exactly another beverage, but they also had the same distribution channels of how they delivered the products even to the smallest town and village and smallest mom and pop shop. That infrastructure was shared. So you have to look at something that sort of ties you together. Of course, as a company like Google or something where you're completely looking at moonshot ideas, that's a different thing. There you're just looking at ideas that change the world. So that there the vision is what ties the products together. So there should be something which helps you kind of reconcile why those products are together, right? So Google is looking at products that change the world. So it could be as different as a smartphone OS when they acquired Android, to looking at balloons, flying, which gives you internet access, but it changes the world. So there should be something which ties that product together to sit with your vision.
Totally. No, it makes sense. And at some points it's good to experiment on a whole new different level too. And it can be a big experiment of launching a different product as well, right? And I've seen many companies what they would do, right? So for example, Slack as a company that was started as an internal communication tool between themselves, and then that became a different product, right, altogether.
Yep.
So and there are many more such success stories, right, where you're working in a company and the company builds a product for their internal use, and now it becomes a whole new different offering of that company, the entire product. That
Absolutely.
same WordPress did the same. I think they were using their own product management tool internally, and now they have opened it to public where you can
Absolutely.
just go and use it, right? So I mean, there are great success stories, and obviously like great failures as well, right? Like Google
Yeah.
has and just speaking about Google, as you mentioned earlier, right? It's like they launched a lot of products, but and they have always failed in launching social connect, any products which required social platform or social connect. So they have failed at it, but I think they always keep bringing something new to it, and keep expanding, keep evolving. But really great examples, right? So talk, like one question which is in my mind, and which many listeners would also would have in their mind, like what is the right time for any company to think about exploring multiple products, right? So how do you decide? Is that, like, there is a time when you can tell that hey, this product that I'm running is product market fit. There's a time when you can tell that hey, we are ready for funding, right? So is there a time for similarly, is there a time for any company to decide that hey, should we explore like new or
New
multiple
products,
products
right?
for the same company, right?
Sure. So like what you said, right, there's a time when product market fit happens, and without a doubt, only after that product market fit happens, you should be even looking at other things, right? So once you have product market fit and then you're seeing that take off, right, like I said, in that S curve, you are in that high slope of that S curve, you're doing all the things for the product market fit, and that that's going smoothly. You just have to do more of that same, and then you can obviously run some experiments on that. And that at that point you will also start looking at customers in terms of what else do you need, what else. You'll start digging deeper, right, because you've gone beyond that survival mode of ensuring customers are coming in and there's a smooth process for everything.
Totally.
And then you're starting to look at what else is going on, what are the nuances of what we can build for customers. And that's a great time to start thinking about how you would expand. Not necessarily that you need to immediately start building it, but that's a great time to start evaluating what is that landscape. what, and of course, assuming that you also have, it's a great way also to show your vision to investors, right? So when you start looking at that, then you'll start seeing all the adjacencies where you think that your company has the DNA to address, and which is relevant for you to address. And maybe
Got
it
it.
could even be products that are usually bought along with each other, or products bought by the same person, right? The same decision maker. So those are all clues to you, because they, talking to your customers will help you do that. So that's a great point to start thinking of your adjacency map, and to look at, okay, these are the other things that we could venture into. And then you start looking at what is a market for all of them, what is the demand for it, what are the real problems in this area, what are the different competitors in the space, are they not solving for it, is an integration with them not good enough, if we build something, how can we add more value than that integration. Those are all things that you need to start charting out, right? And that gives a great foundation to look at what you can build next. And at that point, when you see where you can really bring synergies from, growth for yourself and adding more value to your customer by giving them that, that's a great time to say, okay, let's look at this, let's start this as one experiment, have a small, very nimble team go after that, right? Now for example, now you might have, increased the size of the pie that you are running after by 50% or 70%, depending on what that market, additional market is. And that shows the growth opportunity that your company also has. And it also shows us more and more, areas to grow in. So I think starting to put together that map will give you clarity on when you can do that, because that will also tell you, okay, do you need certain things in technology, do you need certain things, in sales to do this, like what do you need, and then it will tell you that next step. But it's a great, when you hit that PM product market fit and start smoothing, sailing smoothly at that point, that's a great time to start creating this chart for yourself and looking at that space.
Got it. This is really great. Like, I have a lot of things to talk about this particular topic because, it's really interesting to me personally. But, before we could move on to the lightning round, which is the final section of this episode, I have like one hypothetical question for you, right?
Sure.
So let's say hypothetically you are Girish and you own
Okay.
Freshworks. Okay, or you're in his position where or you're in any position in, let's say, in a company like Freshworks, where you have to decide between acquiring a small company. Let's say you want to build Freshchat, for example, right? And you have two options: either you start from zero and start from scratch inside Freshworks and start building a product like Freshchat, or you have another option, like option B, which is like, there's a small, you figure out there's a company which does the same kind of things, and it's kind of a similar product that you want, which already has a few customers. Let's say they have raised a seed round or whatever, and you have an option to acquire them and convert that company into Freshchat, or convert that product into Freshchat. Now I know that Freshworks have done like this in for different products, but just talking about, like, option A is starting from scratch, and option B is acquiring a company and integrating that product in your brand, right? So which option would you choose, and like why the one that you choose is better than the other?
Actually, that's a great question, right? Because that's always something that founders have to evaluate, especially when they know they have some funding, and at the same time they also want high growth. Like, what do they sort of approach? So I think we need to look at this with a framework again, right? Like, for example, I'm just again giving that hypothetical. If we have to,
I mean, yeah, there would be a lot of factors, I know.
absolutely. So
But
looking at, if we have the see, if you're doing something real time, or if you're doing something like chat, it's obviously technology wise some different skill sets from building something like a Freshdesk or Fresh Service, because now you want real time chat. If you want real time chat, you want more things, so you have to kind of see how to scale something differently in the technology side. From a GTM side, it'll be, kind of similar, at least in the beginning. So that's a great way to evaluate, do you have the engineering skills internally to kind of do this new technology? Is it something, you can do quickly? If you don't, then it's a great time to kind of look outward, because not only are you looking at a product, you're also looking to bring in the technology skills into your team, right? So that's one way to evaluate these. And not just technology, you're also looking at sales, right? If you're looking to get into a market where You need to sort of maybe do a lot of community evangelism and things like that. And you have not done that, right? You're in a different space. But you know that, for example, Microsoft, just buying GitHub, right?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
there's such a huge community there.
Right.
And there's no way Microsoft can get into a developer community like that, because they are more very, very enterprise. They go after OEMs and things like that's their market. Of course, now with Azure, they are getting more and more into, infra and other things. But that's the thing, right? So you also acquire a community, you acquire that brand. So,
Got it.
that is one factor. So you look at technology, you look at brand and community, you look at sales models. Like if a company has cracked that outbound sales model, whereas if you haven't done it, or vice versa, right? If you are more into outbound sales and you need SMB inside sales for a new product, that's a great way to, bring in. That's a time to kind of decide. So when developing that muscle from scratch might be very hard for you to do as a company, there's a great time to bring in make that lean towards an acquisition. Of course, assuming that you are very clear as the founders of that new company, and you're very clear on how you align, and that you can integrate the processes very well, right? That's also something which is very key, because a lot of times acquisitions are done but you don't really gel well after that. So that's also something that needs to be looked at. So that's again a framework to see what are the things you need for this product. How can you get it fast? Do you have all the capabilities internally? Or is there a company which is prime for acquiring, in terms of size, in terms of the cost it would to acquire, and will they give us some of these capabilities very easily? And then you see which has more ROI, and you go after that.
Totally. But that's really great, comparison between the two. So yeah, this has been really great, discussing with you, Smriti. Let's quickly move on to the lightning round. So I have three questions for you, and like you have to answer with whatever's on top of your mind, right?
Oh, so much
So
pressure. Okay.
yeah, cool. So what do you know about your work now that you wish you would have known when you first started?
Okay. It's interesting. This is not just for work, I think personally too, but I feel like it applies a lot, or at least I should definitely apply it a lot more to work. So especially when you're starting out new, right, you are obviously looking at everybody else for decisions, and I'm a kind of person who tends to overthink a lot of things and analyze and do all of that. To learn to trust your gut a little bit more, especially not in a way that you discard everything else or data, but to learn to listen to when there are some warning signals, and to dig into it instead of dismissing it, to dig in and go back to first principles for yourself, saying, why I getting this warning signal about this? And then if you keep asking yourself why, you will get back to, you will kind of be able to peel out the layers and figure out what happened, right? And that's great way to create like certain frameworks for yourself, because
Makes sense.
you dug through it. You will also make a decision on whether that was relevant or not, and then you can decide whether you go by a gut. The second thing is that next time that happens, instead of being like, oh, it's just a random gut feeling, you would have already kind of dissected that, and you can actually ask those questions easily,
Got it.
right?
Makes sense.
So I think, I mean, I'm better at doing it now than 10 years back, but I know I still have to do a lot more of it. So to not
Yeah,
just ignore your gut feeling, right? To
totally.
dig it, to question it and dig deeper, and figure out why that's happening is a good
Makes
thing.
sense. No, really, really great take. So yeah. So second one. So what did your biggest professional failure teach you?
Wow, a lot of things. But
Yeah.
so I would say, I think one of the things is, okay, so there are two. One, I would also say, is coming back to that gut, right? It taught me to listen to my gut more, definitely. But I'll also say the other thing it taught me is how, again, building the right teams is very relevant and important, because at the end of the day, and again, this goes to show it, at the end of the day, as product creators, you have to come to terms with product might completely pivot, product might fold, product might fail, but the team and that journey, right, is so important. So even for products that where I have failed, that that the journey that we have been through is something that cannot go away, and the learnings that you had from the journey. So how you build out those relationships with those people, because you learn so much, right? With a designer, with an engineer, architect, sales teams, you learn so much through this journey, and that's going to always be there with you. So cherish that a little bit more than the product itself.
Makes sense. And then the last one, right? Like, what's the number one thing that has helped you shorten your learning curve?
I think for me, so what has helped me shorten, I would say, is taking a lot of big leaps. Like, for example, like I said, right, to kind of make the decision to come from US to India was a big leap.
Got
But I
it.
do think that it opened up, when you are opening up those opportunities for yours, when you do something so different, because you want to try that, it opens up so many more opportunities, and that kind of increases your learning curve. And I think in Freshworks itself, the jumping at an opportunity to create a product from scratch,
Right.
though I had done product management only for a couple of years, that taught me so much, because I got into so many of the other details which won't come in when you're just building feature. I mean, there are of course different learnings, but I feel like all of that really helps you jump and learn more. And I would also want to say that can't happen without surrounding yourself with really smart people,
Totally.
right? And for me, of course, in my journey in Freshworks, right, working with Girish and working with so many other smart people also has helped in that journey. Like, if you are always the smartest person in the room, then you're not challenging yourself enough, right?
Got
That's
it.
the
Mm-hmm.
so I think so taking those leaps, so that you get to be in a place where you're starting from scratch again, it helps you jump so much more, because you're
Yeah.
automatically so much more open to learning at
Yeah.
that point. And the people that you go, when you open yourself up like this, the people that you approach, that also is important.
Totally makes sense. So, yeah, thanks a lot, Smriti, for taking time. I mean, this has been really insightful. I can talk a lot. We can
Mhm.
do another hour or 2 hour long conversation on this particular topic that we discussed, but we have to wrap it up now. But really great talking with you. I would love to discuss more on this particular topic, maybe like a version two of this episode or on this particular topic, right? Because
Mhm.
there's a lot that we didn't discuss, and
Yeah.
I feel
There's
like
so
I'm
much
not
to.
doing justice to the topic of discussion here.
And
So,
I'm sure there's so many more learnings that
yeah,
as you do more products, you can uncover it. Yeah, it's
definitely.
been really great talking about this too. Thanks, Sunil, for having me on the podcast.